By the time a student gets to my class, they think they know all they need to know about interviews. They've sometimes done a project that requires them to do an interview for an assignment. If you haven't, don't worry about it. If you have, you know that it's a great way to get research done and interesting primary data for a project that you're working on. I agree. It's a fantastic way to get information. It may seem easier than it first appears, and that's why I make this little video to try and help students do better with interviews. You can tell that I've had people do interviews with success and also with less success than I'd prefer. And so I want to just caution or suggest some things that have worked for students in the past. As I say here, when done well, interviewers make interviews look deceptively easy. We see them all the time. They're on TV or they're on different formats, and we take them for granted, I think, when in reality they do take a little bit of preparation, especially as you get ready for the interview. My main piece of advice is to be prepared. Be polite, get prepared. I suggest developing what are called open-ended questions. They may seem obvious, but let's take a look at how they're different. If you ask an interviewee questions that are really basic questions, did you go to school, did you go to war, did you go to work, you'll get yes or no answers. Whereas if you ask open-ended question, the second type of question, what was it like to start your business? What was it like to enlist when you did? What was it like to raise your kids? They get the interviewee talking, which is one of the main goals of in an interview and getting ready for an interview. You want to make sure that you achieve success by having a scintillating conversation, which means that you really get involved with the subject that they're talking about and get interested in what they're interested in. That's the goal, after all. As you give questions during an interview, be polite. You want to take notes. I recommend that even in a day and age when people will digitize everything and put everything on a recording. Why would you want to take notes in addition to recording? Because you'll catch nonverbals, because you can think and remind yourself of things that you'd like to come back to later or that you'd like to come back to during the course of the interview. Don't interrupt or be rude as you respond to them and their interests. You don't want to say things like, well, this is all well and good. You've gotten started talking, but I'd like to get us back to my list of questions that I developed. No, no, no. The goal here is to get them talking, and so to achieve that, you want to engage in the conversation. Yes, you want to be prepared. You don't want to be stuck back before the starting point and asking really basic questions about them. Somehow you want to get them talking about their subject, but at the same time, don't keep steering them back to some overall thing that you have in mind. One of my best examples of an interview that I use constantly is a student who years ago went to interview her neighbor. She knew her neighbor had been involved in Vietnam, so she did do a little bit of reading before she went over there so that she wouldn't ask really basic basic yes or no questions about Vietnam War. So she knew something about it, but she let the interview proceed in a natural way, and because of that, she got her neighbor talking about what he'd done after he came back from the war, which was more interesting. It happened to be a newsletter back in the day and age before they had blogs and other things, a newsletter for other veterans that kept them in contact with each other. And what better way could she have than to keep people interested in other veterans and other veterans' issues after they had come back from the theater of war? That was just a great thing. She turned her paper into a focused paper on what he'd done since returning from the war, which was fantastic. Don't be locked into doing the questions only. After the interview, be polite, follow up, and take notes immediately. The interview itself, of course, is not the paper, but the more you can reflect on what you just learned, the better. And why not fire off a thank you? You know, I've been on so many interviewing committees now. I've done a lot of interviews myself, but I've also been on so many interviewing committees. One common piece of advice I'd say is, of course, be polite throughout, before, during, and after. And after is oftentimes forgotten. I'll have discussions with people all the time. What does it matter if I fire off a little thank you note? Why should I have to do it? Snail mail still counts. Showing that you remember the interview still counts. You'd be surprised at how people react to the simplest little thing. Why not just take the time to remind people of what happened during the discussion that you had? You think of it, interviewing committees can go through so many interviews. Even the person who tries to set themselves out by reminding the interviewers, what they went through, and how they're remembered. That's something that helps people put themselves apart from the rest. And so I think I encourage it, even as trivial as it sounds. Things to avoid are the obvious. Avoid the yes or no and the obviously short answer questions. I've said it now, repeated it in the video, and I'll repeat it in class too. But you don't want to just limit yourself with kind of, I hate to say it, kind of dumb questions, because they don't really invite the interviewee into talking with you. They're not dumb, but I think they just don't get off the block. They don't help the conversation to get started. Avoid being obvious? No. Avoid the obvious things, really. Be nice. Even avoid the hint of rudeness. We don't want calls into the school saying, what's this guy harassing me about some interview, and not actually setting it up at a time when it's convenient for me. Remember, the interview is giving of themselves, and you have to show that you respect that you respect them giving their time, their energy, their wisdom, if you will, to help you on your way. And that's what I want to see in this assignment. When you talk to your interviewee, there must be something about that person that you can respect and show that respect for. The goal is not just for the paper, of course. The goal is really to get your subject, the interviewee, talking. If you keep your eyes on the paper, yes, but also on the goal of the interview, then you'll achieve just great results, and you'll have more than enough to talk about when it comes time for the paper. You think about it, the larger purpose here is networking, connecting with people. That's more than just this assignment. It's more than just this class. It's the stuff of life. Show that you're interested. Don't feign an interest if you can help it, because interviewers can tell. Even a young child can tell when the adult with them is not paying attention, doesn't seem to care. You don't want to show that. That's not the thing you want to demonstrate to someone who's obviously understanding that you don't respect them or their time by doing it. Don't just think of short term. It's the big picture that you're about. You'll have so many interviews in your life. The time to start practicing them is even as you're doing assignments for class. You might ask yourself how the interview itself fits into this last paper. Good question. And I can answer it right away. In deductive logic, we look at people's lives, we look at the principles by which they live, and we try to see the logic of what holds it together, what demonstrates their actions to us, and what they're governed by. This is usually how a living person close by to us, who shapes our opinions, lives. And so we're studying what governs them, what makes them tick, if you will. Probably as someone who doesn't get much attention, and the idea is that we're taking a look at their lives, how they've made their choices in their lives, to trace back to that principle by which they're living. They may not even have spent a lot of time reevaluating it recently, and yet your discussion will get them talking about why they live the life that they have, and what principles have guided them.